The rain wasn't falling. It was attacking. It hammered the rooftop of Alara's small cottage, lashed the overgrown garden she hadn't touched since Gran passed, and turned the world into a roaring gray curtain. A flicker of movement, a smudge, of dull orange against the storm-darkened ivy clinging to the garden wall, caught her eye. Not a leaf, too deliberate. Alara pressed her forehead against the cold window pane, her breath fogging the glass. There, huddled in the skeletal remains of Gran's prized roses, was a cat. But not just any cat. Even through the distorting rain, the shape was wrong. Hunched, trembling violently, patches of raw, angry skin glaring through sparse, muddy fur that seemed to be falling out in clumps visible even from this distance. It looked less like an animal, more like a broken umbrella left out in a hurricane. And clutched precariously in its mouth, held with a desperate, almost sacred intensity, was something small and metallic that glinted dully in the gloom. A surge of pity, sharp and cold as the rain itself, pierced Alara's heart. She didn't think. She grabbed her thickest sweater and plunged into the maelstrom. The garden path was a river of mud. Rain instantly plastered Alara's hair to her face, stinging her eyes. The wind snatched her breath away. The cat didn't flee. It watched her approach, its head low, its body trembling not just from cold, but from a profound exhaustion that radiated from its very core. The object in its mouth, a tarnished silver locket on a broken chain, seemed impossibly heavy for such a fragile creature. As Alara knelt, the mud soaking through her jeans, she saw the true extent of the horror. Patches of fur were entirely gone, revealing inflamed, weeping skin. One eye was swollen shut. The other, a startlingly clear amber, fixed on her with an intelligence that was unnerving. It held no fear, only a deep, immeasurable sorrow and a flicker of purpose. The cat took a shuddering step forward, its bony legs trembling under its meager weight. A low, guttural sound, more vibration than meow, rumbled in its chest. It wasn't a plea for food. It felt like an offering, a burden passed on. "Easy now," Alara whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm's roar. She reached out slowly, palm up, ignoring the icy water streaming down her arm. The cat flinched but held its ground, its amber eye unwavering. Its breath came in short, ragged gasps, each one a visible plume in the cold air. The smell hit her then, not just wet fur and earth, but beneath it, a sickly sweet odor of infection and something else. Something dry and ancient like old. Paper and dust clinging to the creature despite the downpour. It nudged her muddy palm with its nose, cold and wet. Then, with infinite deliberate care, it opened its jaws. The small silver locket dropped into Alara's hand. It was surprisingly heavy, cold against her skin. As the cat released its burden, its entire body sagged, a tremor running through it like a final sigh. Its head drooped, the fierce light in its eye dimming. The mission, whatever it was, seemed complete. The immediate, desperate need to get this creature out of the storm and warm overrode the mystery of the locket for a heartbeat. Getting the cat inside was a battle against the elements and the cat's own fragile state. Wrapping the shivering creature in an old, soft towel, Alara felt the alarming sharpness of its bones, the heat radiating from its inflamed skin. It offered no resistance, a limp, feverish weight. Inside, the contrast was jarring. The cozy warmth of the cottage, the scent of chamomile tea Gran always favored, now mingling with the damp, infected odor of the stray. Alara cleared the worn kitchen table, laying down more towels, creating a makeshift nest. The cat lay there breathing shallowly, its one good eye half closed. Alara's fingers hovered over the locket, still clutched in her other hand. It felt like a secret, cold and heavy. With trembling fingers, gritty with mud, she found the tiny clasp. It was stiff, resisting. She used a butter knife, her heart pounding strangely. Click. The locket sprang open. Inside, protected by thin glass, was a small sepia-toned photograph. A young woman, perhaps in her 20s, smiled warmly. Her eyes were kind, her hair styled in soft waves from another era. She wore a simple floral dress. Alara stared, a strange sense of dislocation washing over her. She didn't recognize the woman. But the eyes, there was a familiarity in their shape, a warmth that echoed, Gran? But no, Gran's photos were all familiar. This woman was a stranger. Yet the sense of connection was undeniable, unsettling. Who was she? And why did this dying cat carry her image like a sacred relic? Alara flipped the locket over. Etched faintly on the tarnished silver back, almost worn away, were 2 letters. E.M., her own initials. Alara Mayhew. A chill, deeper than the storm, outside, traced her spine. Coincidence? It felt like a stone dropped into the still pond of her grief. The immediate crisis resurfaced. The cat needed help now. Its breathing was becoming more labored, a faint wheeze underlying each shallow gasp. Alara fumbled for her phone, her fingers numb. The only vet open in this weather was the emergency clinic 20 miles away. She called, her voice tight with panic, describing the cat's condition, the fur loss, the raw skin, the fever, the weakness. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. Bring her in immediately. Sounds like it could be severe mange, malnutrition, possibly worse. Internal issues, don't wait. Worse? The word hung in the warm air of the kitchen like poison gas. Alara looked at the cat, now a small, trembling mound under the towel. Its amber eye opened fully for a second, locking onto hers. In that gaze, Alara didn't just see pain, she saw a silent, desperate plea. Help me finish this. Finish what? The locket? The mystery? The cat's ragged breathing hitched, a wet, terrible sound. Time was slipping away. Bundling the cat into a sturdy cardboard box lined with towels and a microwaved heat pad felt like preparing a tiny, fragile time bomb for transport. The locket, warm now from her grip, went into her pocket, a secret weight against her thigh. The drive was a nightmare. Rain sheeted across the windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle. Wind buffeted the small car. Every bump in the road drew a weak, pained mule from the box on the passenger seat. Alara kept one hand resting lightly on the box, murmuring reassurances she didn't feel. Hold on, little one, just hold on. We're almost there. Her mind raced. E.M. Who was the woman? Why bring the locket to her garden? Was it random? It felt cosmically directed. The cat's purposeful gaze haunted her. This wasn't just survival. This was a delivery, a final act. The storm outside mirrored the chaos within her. Fear for the cat, the gnawing mystery, the echo of Gran's absence that the locket somehow amplified. The emergency clinic's fluorescent lights were harsh, unforgiving. The sterile smell of antiseptic battled the lingering scent of wet fur and sickness emanating from the box. A young vet tech with kind eyes took the box immediately, her professional demeanor faltering for a second as she glimpsed the cat's condition. "Oh, poor darling," she breathed. "Dr. Evans will see her right away." They whisked the box away through swinging doors. Alara stood dripping in the waiting room, suddenly alone, the silence after the car's noise and the storm's roar oppressive. Her hand found the locket in her pocket, its outline pressing into her palm. She pulled it out, staring again at the young woman's serene face. E.M. A name whispered in her mind, unbidden. Eleanor. Gran's sister, who died tragically young, decades before Alara was born. Gran rarely spoke of her, only mentioning her name once, shrouded in a sadness too deep to probe. Was it possible? Was this Eleanor Mayhew? Why would her locket appear now, brought by this suffering creature? The connection felt fragile, terrifying. Was this ghost reaching out? Or just a cruel twist of fate? Minutes stretched into an agonizing hour. Alara paced the small waiting room, the linoleum floor squeaking under her wet boots. She jumped when the swinging doors opened. Dr. Evans emerged, her face grave, her scrubs stained with water and something yellowish. She didn't mince words. "Alara? We've stabilized her temperature somewhat. She's severely dehydrated, anemic, and the skin condition. It's advanced demodectic mange, but complicated. There's something else." The vet's eyes held a deep concern. "She's incredibly weak. We've run some initial blood work. Her kidney values, they're dangerously off. We suspect chronic kidney disease, possibly quite advanced. That, combined with the malnutrition and the secondary skin infections." Dr. Evans paused, choosing her words carefully. "Her body is under immense stress. She's fighting, but she's very, very fragile. The next 24 hours are absolutely critical. We need to see if she responds to fluids and antibiotics. But honestly, prepare yourself. She might not have the strength left." The words landed like physical blows. "Chronic kidney disease, advanced?" Alara leaned against the cold wall, the world tilting. The cat wasn't just sick, she was dying. This fragile creature who had crossed a storm to deliver a secret might not live to see it unravel. The image of the cat's purposeful amber eye, the way it had deliberately dropped the locket into her hand, flooded back. It hadn't just been seeking shelter, it had been seeking her, specifically, to deliver Eleanor's face. Why? Can I see her?" Alara asked, her voice thick. Dr. Evans nodded. "Briefly. She's resting. Be very gentle." The back room was a blur of stainless steel and anxious energy. The cat lay in an incubator, bathed in warm oxygen, tiny IV lines taped to her fragile front leg. She looked impossibly small, lost in the sterile apparatus. The patches of missing fur were stark under the bright lights, the raw skin an angry map of suffering. Her breathing was shallow but steady for now. Alara approached slowly. The cat's one good eye fluttered open. Amber met blue. Time seemed to freeze in the humming stillness of the clinic. There was no fear in the cat's gaze now, only a profound weariness and a depth of understanding that felt ancient. Alara pressed her fingertips gently against the glass of the incubator. "You brought her to me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Eleanor. You brought Eleanor back." The cat's eye held hers, unblinking. It wasn't confirmation, not exactly. It was a silent communion, a recognition that passed between species, across the veil of sickness and human confusion. In that shared gaze, a fragile thread of trust snapped taut. Alara felt a fierce, protective surge unlike anything she'd known. This broken creature, on the edge of oblivion, held a piece of her family's lost history. She couldn't let her go. Not yet. Dr. Evans touched her shoulder gently. "We're doing everything we can. You should go home, try to rest. We'll call with any change." Leaving felt like tearing a piece of her own heart out. Alara walked back through the waiting room, the storm still raging outside. She clutched the locket, Eleanor's serene smile now a haunting question mark. Who was this cat? A messenger? A guardian spirit? Or just a tragically ill stray caught in a bizarre coincidence? The mystery was thicker than the storm clouds. The bond, forged in a rain-lashed garden and cemented in a sterile clinic, was terrifyingly real. As she pushed open the clinic door into the howling wind and rain, the weight of the vigil settled upon her. The cat had delivered her message. Now she was fighting for her life. And Alara knew, with chilling certainty, that the answers about Eleanor, about the locket, about this cat's mysterious mission, were tied to that fragile flicker of life in the incubator. If the light went out, the secrets might be lost forever. The drive home was a blur of rain and wrenching uncertainty. Would the little fighter make it through the night? The question hung, a hook buried deep, impossible to shake. The fluorescent lights of the clinic waiting room hummed like trapped insects. Alara didn't go home. She sat on the hard plastic chair, the damp chill from her clothes seeping into her bones, mirroring the icy dread in her chest. The storm still raged outside, a relentless percussion against the windows, but inside, the silence was deafening. Every tick of the clock on the wall echoed like a hammer blow. Chronic kidney disease. Advanced. Fragile. Dr. Evans's words replayed on a loop. The small silver locket felt like a brand against her thigh through her pocket. Eleanor's serene, unknowing smile burned in her mind. Who was this cat? Why had it chosen her? Chosen Gran's garden? In its final desperate act. The mystery was a physical weight, heavier than the exhaustion pulling at her eyelids. She drifted in a haze of grief for Gran, fear for the cat, and the unsettling sense of being caught in a story written by ghosts. The swinging doors burst open just past midnight. Dr. Evans emerged, her face pale under the harsh lights, her movements urgent. Alara shot to her feet, her heart slamming against her ribs. "She's crashing," the vet said, the words clipped, terrifying. "Kidneys are shutting down. We're starting emergency dialysis, but it's touch and go. You should come back." No time for hesitation. Alara followed, the sterile smell of antiseptic suddenly overwhelming, laced now with the metallic tang of panic. The back room was chaos incarnate. The incubator was a whirlwind of activity. The frail orange form was barely visible beneath technicians and wires. A machine whirred ominously, tubes snaking from it to the cat's tiny leg. Her breathing was rapid, shallow gasps, her sides heaving. The raw patches on her skin seemed to pulse with her distress. Her one good amber eye was wide, unseeing, filled with pure animal terror. Alara's knees threatened to buckle. This wasn't just fragile. This was the edge of the abyss. Dr. Evans worked with fierce concentration, her voice low and steady, directing the team. BP dropping. Increase fluids. Watch the potassium. The medical jargon was a foreign language of doom. Alara moved closer, drawn by a force stronger than fear. She pressed her hand flat against the cool glass of the incubator, directly opposite where the cat's head lay. "Fight," she whispered, her voice raw. "Please, little one. You have to fight. Eleanor needs you. I need you." The cats panicked. Eye flickered. For a fraction of a second, it seemed to focus on Alara's face pressed against the glass. A connection snapped through the plastic barrier. Human desperation meeting animal terror. It wasn't comfort, not yet. It was a shared plunge into darkness, a recognition of the shared precipice they stood upon. The cat's ragged gasp hitched, then seemed to steady, infinitesimally. The frantic beeping of a monitor eased just a notch. Dr. Evans glanced up, her gaze meeting Alara's for a brief, intense moment. A flicker of something passed between them. Not hope, but a shared resolve. Hold on. The hours that followed were an eternity measured in beeps and breaths. Alara refused to leave. She sat on a cold metal stool beside the incubator, her hand never leaving the glass. She talked, softly, constantly. Nonsense about Gran's garden, the stubborn roses, the way the light fell through the cottage window in the afternoons. She talked about Eleanor, the fragments Gran had shared, the sadness that always lingered when her name was mentioned. "She loved animals," Gran said, Alara murmured, her thumb tracing an invisible circle on the glass. "Especially cats. Had a soft spot for strays." The cat's eye remained half-closed, exhausted, but her breathing, though aided by oxygen, seemed less desperate. The dialysis machine hummed its relentless song, filtering poison from blood too weak to do it alone. Was it working? Was it enough? The uncertainty was a physical ache. Dawn painted the sky bruised purple and gray when the first fragile sign emerged. The cat shifted slightly within her nest of towels inside the incubator. Not a spasm of pain, but a conscious movement. Her head turned, slowly, painfully towards Alara. The amber eye opened fully. The sheer exhaustion was still there, a deep well, but the blind terror had receded. In its place was a profound weariness and awareness. She looked at Alara. Really, looked. Not through her, not past her, at her. Alara held her breath. Time didn't just slow, it stopped. The humming machines, the distant sounds of the clinic, the fading storm outside, all dissolved into silence. There was only the cat's gaze, ancient and knowing, locking onto Alara's soul. It was a silent acknowledgement, a wordless understanding, passing between them. In that suspended moment, the bond forged in rain and fear crystallized into something unbreakable. The cat blinked, slowly, deliberately. A silent message. "I see you. I'm still here." Progress was agonizingly slow, a fragile shoot pushing through cracked earth. The dialysis continued daily, a grueling ordeal that left the cat limp and depleted. Alara was a constant presence. She learned to assist gently, holding the cat steady during the procedure, murmuring nonsense that seemed to calm the trembling. She named her. Not deliberately, but the name surfaced one exhausted evening as Alara stroked the small patch of soft fur behind one less inflamed ear. "Phoenix," she whispered, "because you rose from the ashes, little fighter." The name felt right, imbued with the desperate hope of rebirth. One afternoon, a week after the night of terror, Dr. Evans lowered the oxygen flow. Phoenix, nestled in a soft blanket on Alara's lap for the first time outside the incubator, took a deep, unassisted breath. It was a small miracle, a silent fanfare. Alara felt the fragile ribs expand beneath her hand, the warmth of life radiating through the thin fur that was finally, slowly, beginning to regrow in soft, pale tufts. The raw skin was healing, pink and new. Phoenix lifted her head, her amber, eye clear and bright, and nudged Alara's hand with her nose. Not an offering this time. A request. A touch of pure, simple trust. Alara gently scratched under her chin, feeling the faint, rumbling purr vibrate through her own bones. It was a sound so fragile, so precious. Tears welled hot and sudden in Alara's eyes. Healing wasn't just skin and kidneys. It was this purr, this weight on her lap, this silent pact of companionship. Phoenix came home 2 weeks later, a creature transformed yet still delicate. The cottage, once echoing with Gran's absence, now held a new, quiet presence. Phoenix explored slowly, her gait still unsteady but purposeful. She gravitated towards Gran's old armchair by the window, curling up in a patch of sunlight, her gaze often distant, contemplative. The mystery of the locket remained, a constant undercurrent. Alara researched Eleanor Mayhew, finding only a birth record and a vague mention of a tragic accident in old, archived local news snippets. Nothing explained the locket or the cat. The answer came unexpectedly on a quiet afternoon. Alara was sorting through a box of Gran's old sewing things tucked away in the attic. Phoenix lay nearby, watching with her unnervingly intelligent eyes. At the very bottom, beneath spools of thread and faded fabric swatches, Alara found a small, leather-bound journal. Gran's handwriting, faded but familiar, filled the pages. It wasn't a diary, but notes, sketches of garden plans, recipes, and then, near the end, an entry dated over 50 years ago. Eleanor's heart is broken. That wretched man took everything, even Mittens. Her little orange shadow vanished the day he left. Eleanor searched for weeks, frantic. She believed he took the cat to spite her, or worse, left it somewhere cruel. She never stopped looking, never stopped grieving that little cat, or the life stolen from her. She wore that locket always, with her picture inside. Said Mittens would know it, know her scent. Said if Mittens was alive, she'd find her way back. A foolish hope, perhaps. But it kept Eleanor going until the end. My poor, sweet sister. Alara's breath caught. She looked at Phoenix, basking in the sunbeam. The amber eyes met hers. Mittens. The pieces crashed together with dizzying force. The purposeful journey through the storm. The locket clutched like a lifeline. The relentless determination to deliver it, not to Gran, but to the garden, the place Eleanor had loved, the place Gran had preserved. Phoenix hadn't been stolen. She'd been lost or fled, and somehow, impossibly, she'd survived. For decades, carrying the weight of her lost human, carrying the locket until she found the scent of home, of Eleanor, lingering in the roses Gran had tended. She hadn't just delivered a message, she'd come home. Alara sank to the floor beside the journal, tears streaming freely now. Not just tears of sadness for Eleanor's tragedy, but of awe. She reached out. Phoenix stretched, a slow, deliberate movement, and walked over. She didn't curl up nearby. She climbed delicately into Alara's lap, turned a small circle, and settled down, her head resting heavily on Alara's thigh. Her purr rumbled, deep and contented, vibrating through Alara's entire being. It was a surrender, a benediction. The final bonding moment, not in fear or desperation, but in profound peace, in the shared understanding of a circle finally closed. The ghost had been delivered. The mission, spanning a lifetime of loneliness and instinct, was complete. Weeks turned into months. Phoenix grew stronger. Her fur, once falling out in clumps, became a soft, luxurious flame orange mantle. The haunted look in her amber eyes softened, replaced by a serene watchfulness. She spent her days watching birds from Gran's chair or following Alara around the cottage, a silent, comforting presence. One crisp autumn afternoon, Alara sat in the garden, finally tackling the overgrown roses. Phoenix sat beside her on the sun-warmed path, her gaze fixed not on the birds, but on the silver locket Alara had placed on a stone nearby, catching the light. Inside, Eleanor's smile seemed warmer, no longer a ghost, but a memory honored. Alara looked at Phoenix, this ancient, mystical creature who had walked through decades of solitude, guided by a love etched deeper than time, to fulfill an impossible promise. She had crossed storms and faced death, not for survival alone, but for this. For belonging, for peace. She delivered a ghost and found a home.